Do we have an intact recovery? We've had nearly 3 years now of 200,000 job gains per month. I don't think that there's this massive acceleration that's going to go on here, but the reality is that earnings are rising. Bond valuations are, very high, and that markets can make progress after this.
Well, depending on the person you talk to at any given moment, the American economy is rebounding, and we will all be tasting financial milk and honey any second now. Others will point to real figures and ask if those with a rosy glow have been dipping into the financial mushrooms a little too often. Either way, there might be a good omen here for the small business owner, the real backbone of the American job force. Let us make sense of it all. Welcome back to MidPoint. Chairman of the Society to Advance Financial Education, Steve Beaman, is here to educate us today. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Let's try. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Can you hear me? Okay, they're going to go ahead and check the audio. No sweat. This is not a problem here. Let me bring you up to speed on a couple of things here when it comes down to these small job reports, because these are the ones that we're going to talk about. Job openings have hit a 13-year high as the small firms finally have a reason to hire again. The job openings rose to their highest level since the dot-com era. Multiple reports out this week saying the labor markets are finally on firm footing. Labor Department has what they call JOLTS. That's the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, and this is favored by the Federal Reserve. Every time we hear the words Federal Reserve, I know a lot of people start to shake a little bit, but the openings rising to 4.671 million in June. That is the most since February of 2001. So the Fed is basically taking this system, which they call JOLTS, and they're incorporating this into their overall thinking process. Now, why is this good news? It's good news simply because small business is indeed the backbone of what goes on here in America. We're constantly talking about large firms in this country and the fact that these are the ones that create the jobs, and these are the ones that we're always worried about when they have unemployment. It is the small companies. There's been a boom in this. The question here is now whether or not the banks are going to be giving these small businesses exactly what they need to get it done. It comes down to credit at this point. A real small business getting a loan from a big bank is maybe, and this is a little bit disconcerting, I think, to small businesses here. When you look at everything a small business has to put to work on any given day, the bank credit is the thing that they need in order to properly survive. The answer, banks satisfying the need for small market credit, around 19%. Not a good idea. You'd think that the banks would actually be more in favor of handing out money to the small businesses. The number, though, may overestimate a lot of the willingness of the big banks to basically hand out a lot of this money. Big banks are ones with about $10 billion in assets. Those are the ones that you need to make sure have the money that they're able to give to the small businesses. The small businesses themselves don't even really apply for the loans a lot of time because, frankly, they think they're not going to be able to get the loans. Whether or not they get the loans makes all the difference. So it comes down once again to what are the big banks willing to do for the small businesses. Let's check in again, see if Steve Beaman has joined us here. Steve, want to make sure you can hear me all right this time.
Yeah.
There you go. We got you.
Thank you for your patience. You got to love technology.
We deal with technology on a daily basis, Steve. Trust me, we're ready for anything on this show. Let's talk again about the small businesses. I just detailed a little bit about what the small businesses are going through here. There seems to be a boom again in small businesses. There seems to be a reason for optimism here. I want you to comment on that, but please also comment on the fact that the small businesses need the banks to get involved, and it's that credit that they absolutely have to have in order to grow.
Well, indeed. Let's first of all go, as you and I have talked on this show before, we have been in a recovery, although it's slower than any of us would like. But we have been. So that optimism and the job opportunities that exist is real. I think there's an important note here that people need to understand. We're in a barbell economy where if you look at jobs in the professional and business services, for example, or in education and healthcare, those are expanding rapidly. But if we go to manufacturing, construction, those jobs still aren't anywhere near what they were in, let's say, 2004. So as much as we want to be optimistic, we should be cautiously optimistic and ensure that we don't let ourselves get too exuberant about this recovery. It's real, it's there, and I feel good about it, but let's be toned in kind of how we look at it and tempered.
Let's go. Okay, good. Please continue.
Well, to your very important point about credit, and this is an absolutely important thing for folks to understand. As we came through the credit crunch, the Federal Reserve, that does oversee the nation's banks, greatly tightened up credit restrictions. So we have not seen the kind of commercial lending that we need for the small business community. Now, in the micro community, you have crowdfunding and things of that nature that are stepping up to fill in the gap, but we still are not seeing the lending get back to where it needs to be.
All right, now what gets it back to where it needs to be? What's the key to get there?
Well, a couple of things. First, interest rates will need to go up. So put on those funds. The Congress, and we need to see that to help the American people realize we're on the right track. We need to continue growth, and the way to get there is to have the American people once again step up and realize, you know what, we're going to make it through this. It's been a challenging number of years, but this economy is big enough, and the American people are loaded with ingenuity, and we can get back as long as we believe once again in ourselves.
We always hear about the people who have quit and are no longer looking for work. Are we ever going to be able to get them back into the workforce?
Not in the way they did, and that's a structural change that's taking place. You know, if you look out on the West Coast, McDonald's is now exploring robotic servers for its restaurants. We are seeing technology change the very nature of work in this world. So I think we won't look for it to come back like it did. But again, people being the ingenious people they are will come up with new ways to find gainful work, and I'm sure that the private markets will be able to accommodate that.
Steve, never fear. We are never going to replace you with a robot. I promise you this. We're going to make sure it happens, okay? So you're in good. Economists are going to be all right. Broadcasters, we hope the same thing, too, as well. Steve Beaman, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friends. We'll do it again real soon.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, Steve. Next hour on MidPoint, what to really make of the latest power shift in Iraq. And after the break, 45 years ago today, history was made, and more than a few lessons that we seemingly have failed to learn from. That's coming up and a whole lot more right here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.